So Flight Risk was directed by Mel Gibson and it stars Mark Wahlberg, Michelle Dockery, and Topher Grace. And it's about this man who decides to testify against this mob boss, and this woman helps escort him to basically testify and such. However, their pilot, who is moving them to basically, testify and such, is actually a hitman for this mob boss. So he goes basically they have to fight off this guy, try to survive the plane, and yeah, that's this movie. I remember seeing the trailer for this movie. It's been out for a while. I remember this movie actually got pushed back by a few months. It was supposed to come out in October of last year, got pushed back to January, which that's always a good sign. And I remember seeing the trailer and thinking a few things. One, Mel Gibson's directing this movie. Now, say what you will about Mel Gibson. I know I certainly have. I don't like some of the things he said in his personal life. I don't agree with that at all. But I do recognize that he's made some good movies in his career, including Hacksaw Ridge, which was his last movie. I was kind of surprised that because he's normally directing these big, epic movies and such, that he would go do this movie, which seems very small. And then also Mark Wahlberg being in this movie. I'm not really the biggest fan of Mark Wahlberg. I don't really have anything against him personally, but when I saw that he was actually the villain of this movie, I was actually kind of amazed. Kind of like, huh, I feel like Mark Wahlberg would be the hero of this movie instead of being the villain. But the trailer kind of looked corny, kind of looked goofy, kind of looked like everyone was kind of doing a paycheck movie. And I saw this movie, and it's not great. Like, it's not a movie where I'm just mad that I actually saw it, but it's more, I don't know. I feel like this is a weird movie. Like, there are times where this movie can be entertaining. There are times where this movie can be hilarious, but for the wrong reasons. But let's dive into it. First off, again, I think the movie itself can be kind of entertaining. In a Sometimes for some of the thrills, like sometimes where it's like, oh, they kind of do this thing in like thriller movies and such. It's like, okay, there's some tension there, fine. But also, there's kind of some really goofy moments in this movie. It can be unintentionally funny at times. Like one of the opening scenes involving Topher Grace, I'm like, that was just really funny. It wasn't really that great, but it was really funny. Just like how they just did everything. I don't know why. Again, there's some very funny, some unfunny moments. Like there are some intentional funny moments and some unintentional funny moments. Like Topher Grace has a few one-liners towards the beginning of the movie, and it's like, okay, that's kind of funny. Maybe I'll like your character. By the end of the movie, I didn't, but that's beside the point. But again, some movies, like some moments, like some editing choices just did not work because they were just so ridiculous and they were just so funny to me. I don't know why. The movie does at least have a 90-minute runtime, which fine. I'm happy about that. I feel like if this movie was made like 15 years ago, this movie probably would have made like would have been like 2 hours maybe, and would have been overkill. This movie is at least aware it's 90 minutes, and the performances themselves are okay-ish. Like Michelle Dockery does an okay job. Topher Grace is fine for the first third of the movie. Mark Wahlberg is at least kind of playing against type in this movie. I don't know. He has played weirdos before, but it's at least interesting to kind of see him play a bad guy, even one as ridiculous as this one. But let's talk about some of this movie because let's talk about some of the negatives about this movie because there's a lot about this movie that I really did not like. First off, Mark Wahlberg, I mentioned that his performance is fine, but like you kind of see a lot of the bits that in the trailer in the movie. And that's all you really get. They knock out Mark Wahlberg multiple times in this movie, which I'm like, yeah, I get it. I get why you're doing that, but at the same time, I'm like, this is kind of boring actually. Because like once Mark Wahlberg is out, what do they do? How do they survive this plane? Oh, let me call the tower and such to basically try to figure out how to fly this plane. Okay. You kind of just have an unconscious Mark Wahlberg in there for a while. Again, it just feels like everyone was kind of doing this movie just for a paycheck. Like, it's like, hey, Mark Wahlberg, do you just want to lay unconscious on a plane for a while? And like, sure, why not? The movie itself is kind of goofy. It is really goofy at times. Like, again, some of it is unintentional. Like some edited moments are pretty goofy, but then there are some moments where I'm watching it and it's like, what are you even thinking? Like, okay, so they talk to this one guy on the tower, or some guy who knows how to fly planes and such. But during this whole thing, he's trying to talk to Michelle Dockery's character, and he's like, "Hey, you want to go to dinner sometime?" And I'm like, "What are you doing? This is so unprofessional. It is so hilarious to me." I don't know why. I was laughing more at the unintentional hilarity of this movie at times than I did at some of the intentional hilarity. That's not necessarily the best thing. Yeah, I kind of felt like everyone in this movie was kind of told to act differently. Mark Wahlberg was told to act crazy, Michelle Dockery to act straight, and then Topher Grace just whatever, just whatever. Like, doesn't even matter what the scene really called for. Either be funny or either be just really bored and awkward and such. I feel like the movie itself is also kind of misguided at times as a thriller. Now, there are some moments of tension in the movie, as I mentioned, but I feel like there aren't enough of those. Like, the movie, let's say, knock out Mark Wahlberg's character. They kind of have this thing where it's like, okay, they have this whole new plot of this movie where it goes into, I won't spoil too much of it, but big surprise, it goes a lot bigger than they expected it to. And it's just kind of weird that they kind of just talk about it instead of like actually doing anything about it. And again, they're flying the plane and such. And I feel like it would make more sense if Mark Wahlberg's character kind of just woke up immediately and they were dealing with his character more throughout the entire movie. And that way it's like, he's the only one who knows how to actually fly the plane. That would at least be kind of interesting. Like, you can't really kill this guy because he's the only one who can actually save us. Yeah, that would be kind of interesting. And you could actually have Mark Wahlberg in your movie a lot more, but this movie is so misguided in what it's trying to do. And I feel like at the same time as well, the movie tries to be two different types of movies. It tries to be like a 90s goofy movies, like something like, say, Con Air or something. Both movies involve a plane. But then it tries to be a little bit more serious than that, like movies like, say, Flight Plan or Nonstop. And it's like, just pick a lane. I could respect it if it tried to do one or the other, but it literally tries to be both, and I felt like neither one really worked out. So this movie, despite the fact that there are entertaining moments in this movie, and the performances themselves are fine, and at least the movie is mercifully short, I feel like it was just misguided in a lot of ways. I felt like it was misguided in how to do it as a thriller. I felt like the main plot was just very misguided as well. I felt like it was unintentionally goofy at times. There are some moments where I'm just thinking about this movie, and I'm thinking to myself, I can take the movie Airplane more seriously than this. That is weird. That is weird. And again, if it had been a 90s-esque movie that was like intentionally corny, I would have appreciated it. Or if it was as serious as like Nonstop or Flight Plan, I would have appreciated it. But it just exists in this weird space where like everyone involved in the movie is talented in some way, and everyone is just saying, let's not try. Let's not try as much as we should. I'll give Flight Risk 1.5 out of 4 stars. Stream it. So, what is your favorite movie starring Mark Wahlberg? Comment down below, subscribe to the channel. This is Pat. Stay safe.